Hello, my name is Ashley, this is Faithful Rattos, and welcome back. So in this week's video, I'm here to talk to you about the age-old question. Is that rat an albino? Now, this may sound a little bit weird, but I get asked this question a lot when I'm on the train. I go to rat shows and I've picked up rats from breeders or rescues or rescued rats myself a lot. And because I don't drive, this means I'm on the train a lot. And sometimes I have rats with me with red eyes. And if people notice the rats and they notice they have red eyes, or even if I don't even have any red-eyed rats with me, people will still ask, is that rat an albino? Or how are they albino? Or how does this work? And this then leads to a lecture on the train by me about rat genetics, which is not usually what I think people will expect. It is a much more in-depth question that gets asked, and it does involve a lot to do with genetics. And I'm going to talk about that today as part of my Rat Varieties and Genetics series. So there are, I want to say, 5 main ways that rats can get red or ruby or pink eyes, and they are different to each other. And only one subsect of one of the reasons is actually an albino. The rest are just rats with red or pink eyes. So let's start with that. An albino rat is a rat on the C-locus with 2 copies of the lowercase c gene or the albinism gene. And this is the only rat that is technically an albino. Any other rat with red eyes is just a rat with red eyes. So the C-locus is very interesting, and I have 2 videos already on my channel talking about C-locus. It is the family of varieties I'm interested in breeding, and obviously I will be talking about C-locus a lot in the future of my channel. Now, on the C-locus, you have the off version, which is the dominant, the big C, and the little c, which is the first of the recessive genes, and this is the albinism gene. 1 copy is just carried, but 2 copies will show, and so 2 copies of the little c gene will create an albino rat. There is an interesting phenomenon on the C-locus, and this is called acromelanism. Now, there are a couple of genes that cause acromelanism, the biggest one being the Himalayan gene, which is noted as little c with a little h, hovering above, and this is the Himalayan gene. 1 copy of this and 1 copy of albino will make a Himalayan, and 2 copies of this gene will make a Siamese. Now, this gene is really interesting, as I mentioned, because of the acromelanism. And acromelanism is an interesting form of albinism where the temperature affects the pigment. And this is basically because the proteins that cause the pigment are denatured at a certain temperature within the body, which means that the colder areas of the body are darker because those areas aren't having the protein denatured. So that is what creates the points when you see a Siamese or a Burmese or a Tonkinese or a Wheaton. Those are points coming from that really cool piece of genetic information, and it's a really cool gene, and I think it's so cool. It's just so cool. And so these rats will also have red eyes. So the baseline for rats that are expressing C-locus genetics is red eyes. So Siamese and Himalayan rats have red eyes. Tonkinese rats have red eyes. Marten rats and any of the Marten varieties have red eyes. And that is because they're on the C-locus and they have copies of this albinism gene, or they have copies of the acromelanism gene, the Himalayan gene. And so this produces red eyes because of the lack of pigment. Now, interestingly enough, on the C-locus, there are certain varieties attached to it, like Burmese, that bring the black eyes back. There is also a black-eyed gene that can attach itself to the C-locus and can be carried as well. And this is how you get black-eyed Siamese rats and black-eyed Marten rats. And it's because of this so-called C-locus black-eyed gene. But basically, all C-locus rats will have red eyes, and that is the first way the rats can get red eyes, but only the rats that are CC, lowercase c's, are technically albinos. Every other rat variety that I'm about to mention are technically not albinos, and so this makes this question really difficult. Now, the next 2 ways that I'm going to talk about are other dilute genes, and these are pretty simple. They are simple recessives. You either carry them, you don't carry them, or you are them because you are presenting 2 of the recessive genes. So the first one is the pink-eyed dilute, and this makes pink-eyed rats, as it would infer. And the 2 main varieties that you will have heard of here in the UK are silver fawn and champagne. Now, I think these varieties have different names in different countries. I don't really know which one's which, and I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm not going to say what it would be in your country, but these are what we call them: silver fawn and champagne. And these are really pretty varieties. I love them. They are quite delicate, and the silver fawn is like a really, really special orangey fiery color, especially as they age, and it is a special variety to me because I had a little silver fawn that passed away as a baby. His name was Coulson. So these are the two base varieties with pink-eyed dilute. You can add even more dilutes on top of that to create different versions. You know, you can make a Russian silver fawn or a Russian champagne, which isn't really that common, but you can obviously do it. Then the other one is the red-eye dilute, and the red-eye dilute will make topaz and buff. So silver fawn and topaz are agouti based, and champagne and buff are black based. Now, when it comes to the red-eye dilute, they can have blood clotting issues, and this is something that red-eye dilute breeders need to be aware of. And this is why it's really important to know the pedigree and the history of the rats that you're breeding, because even if those rats that you are breeding are not red-eye dilute, they may carry red, which means that if they were to mate with another rat that carries red, you could be leading into some blood clotting issues. So this is something that breeders need to be very aware of when it comes to red, and that is why it's often not recommended for new breeders to start off with red-based varieties. Now, the fourth way that rats can have a reddish coloured eye, a ruby tint. Hello, Ashley from the future here. I actually misspoke when I originally filmed this video, and so I'm just going to refilm this segment instead of refilming the entire video, and that's why the shot looks different, because it's like a week later. So, when other dilutes are present on a rat that is US mink based, their already ruby eyes can lighten even further. Marking genes such as Essex, especially marking genes that have facial markings, can cause the eyes to lighten even further and compound the effect. Odd-eyed rats is because of this, so usually it will be a US mink based rat plus other dilutes, plus a marking gene that affects the facial markings. And these facial markings go near the eye and cause the already ruby eye to lighten even further. And then you have a dark ruby eye and a red eye. This happened to my rat Tushy. He was a chocolate American cinnamon Essex. He was also a Dumbo. We sadly lost him recently. He had odd eyes, and it was because of the compounding effect of all of these things. So American cinnamon is cinnamon made with US mink, because cinnamon is mink plus agouti. Other varieties such as Havana will also have these dark ruby eyes, and this comes from the US mink in the genetics. So Havana is black, US mink, and chocolate, and one copy of the red gene that I mentioned before. So yeah, US mink and some other of the dilutes like British blue can sometimes have ruby eyes. They are quite dark and quite hard to tell, as you can see from the picture here, but they are ruby, and lightening effects can impact them a little bit more because they already have ruby eyes. And the final way that rats can get sort of a red tint to their eyes is a roan rat. Roans are known for their eyes having a bit more of a reddy, ruby hint to them, and I'm not really sure the reason. I just know that it can happen, and out of the, I think, 6 or so roans that I've kept so far in my rat keeping journey, about half of them have definitely had this sort of ruddy tint to them. I remember when I first noticed it, and my first roan rat, his name was Periite, and he was my first heart rat. He definitely had a red tint to his eye that I was very concerned about, I think, at first. And I posted on the NFRS forum, and I was told about this phenomenon that roan rats can also have this slight ruby red tint to their eyes based on the pigment in their eyes associated with the roan gene. And there you have it. Those are the ways that rats can get red eyes, and that is why not every rat with red eyes is an albino. I thought this was an interesting and slightly different way to talk about rat genetics and varieties in my series, rather than just sitting there and talking to you about genetics, blah, blah, blah. I thought this was a way to talk about all of these possible situations, talk about red and talk about paired. And yeah, so that is That is why rats have red eyes. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you do, please do subscribe to stick around and give me a like. Maybe leave a comment down below if you have a question or something to say. I always love hearing from you. I don't get time to reply to every single comment, but I do read them all. Don't you worry. And yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!